Today, I'm going to talk about one thing that can be a common issue for creative people like me, which is the tendency to start a lot of things and not finish them. I think it's a natural consequence of being the kind of person who just thinks of a lot of ideas, and a lot of those ideas sound fun. A lot of those ideas sound like things we want to just go ahead and start doing right away. And I think that it can be detrimental sometimes and can create disillusionment when we start a lot of things and then we're surrounded by the evidence of all the projects that we have finished and not started. And I'm personally am the king of unfinished projects. I've got a hard drive filled with book manuscripts that I've started writing and never finished. And I think I tallied up the word count at one point. It was over 500,000 words. If you added up the manuscripts that I started and didn't finish, it actually got to the point where you may have heard some people that they'll buy 2 copies of a book because they forgot they'd bought a book before. And in my case, I actually had thought up an idea for writing a book, thought up the same idea twice, and then realized that I had actually started writing a manuscript, got a few chapters into it, forgot about it, abandoned the project, and then started writing the same book a second time. There's a lot I could say about what it takes to interrupt the cycle of unfinished projects, of starting things and not finishing them. But I want to focus on 2 specific aspects of things that I have done and things I am doing that help to basically retrain my habits so that I'm less likely to start something unless it's something I'm going to finish. And I also have found that sometimes it's just, before I even get into this, to just accept that it's okay to not finish something. It's okay to just decide that you're not going to finish a project. And sometimes that's the best way to remove the piece of mental clutter, to say, you know what, it's an idea. It sounded great at the time. And once I got into it, I realized that maybe the time required to finish the project was unmanageable. Maybe it was just too much of a distraction. Maybe I've just got too many other things going on. Sometimes it makes sense to say, maybe I'll finish this, but I'm not going to finish it right now. And I find that sometimes it's okay to give myself permission to never necessarily finish it, but to park it somewhere where maybe someday I could decide I want to finish it, but I'm not promising myself that I ever will. That said, when we think about what projects we're going to start, what is it? What can help to deter us from starting that which we are likely to never finish? And there's 2 strategies that I have, 2 tactics that I use. One is implementing consistent routines. And this is something that's a work in progress. Right now, I've got it's technically not a bullet journal. It's a bullet journal knockoff, but it's the type of journal that's got the little dots inside of it. But right now I've got a little bookmark in here, and each day I've got a simple template. I write out my goals. I write out what I'm going to accomplish that day, and I write out a couple of other things. But this is the first thing I do every morning is I fill out a page in this journal. And I've also started implementing, like, one of the things that I've realized is that my goal with what I write on my to-do list for a day, part of why I do it on paper, is that I tend to think in terms of spreadsheets. I use a lot of Excel spreadsheets for things. And the problem with using a to-do list in an Excel spreadsheet that I didn't realize is that you can infinitely add as many things as you want and have those things carry over. What I like about the practice of having to write it out by hand every day is that there's only so many things I'm going to write out before my hand gets tired. And there's only so many things I can fit on a physical page. And it forces me to think consciously about what I'm declaring as my goal to accomplish on a given day. My goal with my to-do list is to finish every single thing that I write down for that day. And so that's part of my thought process in the morning is, if I write this down with the thought process that if I knew that I absolutely had to finish everything I write here, would I still be writing the thing I'm about to write? I have not done 100% of everything I've written on here a lot of different days. That's just my goal. That's my benchmark. But my goal here is to just be as realistic as possible in what I say I'm going to accomplish, and to recognize the gap on a daily basis between what I said I was going to accomplish and what I in fact did accomplish, and then start asking myself the question of, why did that gap exist? Was there a gap because I was unrealistic in what I wrote down, or was there a gap because I was inefficient in my use of time? And that's something that I look at on an everyday basis. This habit here of writing my goals down, writing down what I want to accomplish, is important for the reasons that I just outlined. But there's also a less obvious reason why any habit is important when you make it a daily habit, that you begin to condition yourself to think differently on an automatic basis. That I've noticed, and I've only been doing this not terribly long. When I look at the dates going back here, it's only been about a month or so since I implemented this practice. And already I can see how my thinking has started to change in the sense that when I come up with a new idea, I've started to ask myself, okay, is this something that fits inside the scheme and the universe of things that I already said I was committed to? Or is this going to be something that takes resources away from all of the things that I'm already working on? One of the other concepts that's here in this book that I use, I actually have a little corner in the bottom of the page, which is my tomorrow corner. I use that to capture any new action items that might appear in my email inbox, or new things that I think about that, oh yeah, that I've got to do that at some point. Generally, my habit has been, and this has been really useful to ask myself, that new action item I just thought of, is that part of what I said I was going to get done today? And if not, does it absolutely have to be done today? And if the answer is no to both of those questions, I'll write it in my little tomorrow corner. So that's another piece of a way. It's a strategy that I use to protect myself against distraction, protect what I said my commitments were against the distraction of outside stuff that just pops up. So that's one strategy. The second core piece, so I told you I was going to share with you two things that I do to protect against the cycle of unfinished projects. So that's one piece, the piece of writing down my goals as a morning routine. The second tool that I'll share with you is accountability, social accountability, group accountability. I've learned that there is value in showing up consistently in groups over time. One of my core accountability groups right now is I've got a Toastmasters club. I've been building that since 2016 with a core group of people. And over time, and this is something I really wish I had learned a lot earlier on in life, is that when I show up consistently, that helps to build strong relationships. There's no better investment in the world than any of us can ever make than that of our relationships. I find that when I have a group with a structure, and it could be a Toastmasters, it could be another kind of group, whatever type of a group it is. I've got other groups that I'm part of as well. But, regardless of the specific type of group, that's not really what I want to focus on for this conversation right now. The focus is there a consistent way for you to show up in a group? Because the reason for that is that the social accountability that gets created in a group, when there is a structure to the group, when there's a defined purpose to the group, when there's a reason why everybody comes to the group, and when there's something that everybody's there to practice or learn or master, whatever that is, regardless of the type of group, when you become known as a person who shows up consistently, it not only helps to build relationships, but in terms of the cycle of unfinished projects, it helps to cement in place a different kind of thinking, because when you show up, the way that you show up in a group, the persona that you bring forth in a group, helps to really clarify your thinking about who you are in the world. And it helps to really give you kind of a litmus test to think about, okay, if I've got a new project idea, does this fit inside of who I really am? And the way we show up in groups gives us a better view of that. This is one of those things that's easier for you to experience than it is for me to explain. And so I would suggest that if you've got a bunch of different groups that you may show up in sporadically, to challenge yourself to think about, what would it be like if I picked one or two groups and just said, I'm going to put more of my resources into showing up in those groups on a consistent basis, thinking about what groups could you be more consistent and more committed to, rather than, I mean, and there's nothing wrong with trying out a bunch of groups, checking out a bunch of groups, showing up in some places here and there, as long as there's something, as long as you've got home bases to go back to. It doesn't have to be just one. I would recommend that it not be 20, but I think maybe, 3 to 5 groups maybe that you've got for different purposes. You might have groups for business purposes. You might have a group for educational purposes. You might have a group that's for health and fitness purposes. There's a lot of different, you might have a purely social group, but just think about, showing up consistently. That will help to reinforce the type of thinking that leads to starting projects and actually finishing them, rather than starting too many projects and not finishing them. Those are just a couple things. This is something, there are plenty of different aspects of different challenges you have to face when you're deciding what to start and how to finish it. But those two tools that I shared with you today, those are a couple that I think if you put those into place, you will have an easier time making good decisions about which projects are indeed worth starting and which ones are not for right now. Be sure to hit the subscribe and click on the bell for future videos. That's all for today. Till next time.